Good morning, good Erev Shabbos, Parshas Vayera, Shabbos from later Yitzchak, and obviously the Kodesh Yitzchak. Yesterday we were Messiahing Haflah, Seder Haflah, Sefer Haflah. Today we started, yesterday we also started Israel. So the last of the three prakim today is Perek A. Rambam in Hilchos Kilayim Perek A, Halacha Zayin writes, and I'm going to learn a few halachas, Zayin, Ches, and Tes. Very interesting, each one. And there's a connection, but let's do each one. Talks about Kilayim Keren. There are different types of Kilayim. As we know, there's Kilayim Zerayim, and there's Kilayim Behema, and there's Kilayim Begodim. So he writes, Osir Lizroya Yiraka Situa Betsadak Fanam, Relita Geffen Betsada Yereka Tua. Can't plant one next to the other. And also came Avabisha Ene Lake. You don't get Malchus. The reason for that is a discussion for its own. The Rambam holds that you only get Malchus if you do 2 minimum of Zroim. Areza Kodesh, it's Kodesh. The Nasru Shneim Bahando, they become Osabano. Ayerek through Ayarifan. What's the mocker for that? The Rambam was served in a Shneya. First of all, also we have to burn them both, which we'll discuss. And what's the Pasuk Shnema Pentigdash Hamaleya Hazer? Now here the word Pentigdash has various translations. But for the fact that he puts it together with Viserfin, it would indicate that he teaches it the way there's one opinion. In the Gemara of that Pentigdash is a word that is made up of 2 words. Tukad Eish, burn with the fire. And I guess he's learning that the Isra of Sreifa, the Isra, no, comes from the fact that they have to burn it. You have to burn it. It means you can't have enough. Otherwise, why would you burn? I wouldn't tell you to burn something that you can have pleasure from. Halacha Ches, the Rambam says an interesting lashon writer with the concept of Harisa Kodesh. The Ein Adam Magdish, or Mekadesh, Davar She'ein Shalai. A person can't make holy his lashon, the word Mekadesh, Davar She'ein Shalai. Therefore, if you put your geffen on somebody else's Tua, his geffen becomes us, like it's Kaddish on Tua. And also on Shvit, you can't make. You can't do Kilayim Keren because you don't own the field. And then Halacha Tes comes an interesting halacha. So say Halacha Tes has an interesting halacha Tes. Aroya Kilayim Keren Chaveirei. Right? V'kaimon Arezeh Aroya Osaban Yosam. The guy who sees it, a person seeing. Now, the words of the Rambam indicate, I'm walking in the street, I see somebody's Karen. Obviously, I could do something about it. I don't. And it grows, obviously. But everybody else is okay. The Ilu Kaiman Balakaren. But if Balakaren would walk, even though he didn't plant it, he just saw it, and he didn't let it go and grow. Yeah, those are the halachas around. Now, the Yishalmi, which is the makkah for this halacha, I mean, the makkah is a Mishnah, but the Yishalmi, which discusses it more in detail, says, yes, the kasha. If it's awesome to him, how can it be mutter to everybody else? If it's mutter to everybody else, how can it be awesome to him? The Gemara answers, and the Yishalmi answers, we're going according to Rabbi Shimon that holds Ein Adam Magdish Davar She'ein Shalai. And therefore he can. So if he did it, it's also to him. But somebody else would be also for everyone. If the owner does it, it's also. So again, what we need to understand here is the expression of Magdish relating to Kilayim Keren. It's not the seemingly appropriate lashon. The magnish davar she'ein shleim, the mekadesh davar she'ein shleim. Because there's another expression. There's an expression brought in halacha, and the Rambam mentions it. The eised davar she'ein shleim. Magdish is usually reserved for real hegdish when you make something hegdish. So why over here is we talk about this lashon? It sounds strange. B'chlal, what is this isur? If you do it yourself, it's usur for you and not for anybody else. So the general consensus, I can't say this is a general consensus because not that many people talk about it, but those who I have seen talk about it assume, and again, this is from the later Achreinim, they assume that it's a knas d'rabban. And rightfully so, in logic, it would make sense. How do you make something usur for one person, not for the other? Obviously, knas d'rabban. However, the reading of the Yerushalmi doesn't sound like that. Because the Yerushalmi asking him, and his answer is not. And that ain't another magdar shlim shalei, meidahu, that it's usur for somebody, for the person. I'm mashmei. No remez of an isur d'rabbanan. And the Lashon Rambam also, he has ways of saying that it's a d'rabbanan, and he doesn't shy away from what he does that. And the fact that he writes that in such a clear, awesome, the reason they say it is they don't have any other way of learning this is the Rabbanan, this is the Reis, such a type of matter. Okay. Next issue is, we said the source that the Rambam brings is that Serfin and Pentigdash Amaleya, which is in the Sefer HaMitzvos, Yitaka writes that clearly. Pentu Kadesh. The Rambam himself, in Hilchis Macholos Asuros, Perik Yud Halacha Bob, where he brings the din of Klayakera, the Isser of Klayakera, and he says, Min Tvua, Minei Rakesh, Nizraga, Im Hagefim, Ben Shazar Yisrael, Ben Shazar Nachri, Ben Shalom Aleim, Ben Shanot Hagefim, Ben Chayer, Shneim Asurim, Bachila, Badoi, Shnema, Tugdash Hamaleya Hazera Shatizra Tvuas Hakara. And he teaches the word Tugdash. Tisrachik with a Oser, with a Eser, I'm sorry. Okay. It becomes distant from you, removed from you. Claim my pen Tisrachik with Eser Shnei. Both of them will become us. Perhaps both of them will become removed from you. So here he's learning the different. He's learning that the word tukdash means tukdash. Tisrachik with das, not as tukdash, and to come to tisrachik with das. And not, but one thing's for sure, it doesn't seem that he's using the lashon of tukadesh. Then this is Rashi and Chumash. Parshas Kisei says tukdash. Teaches it kitargumay, tista'ev. And Rashi says the following: Kol dover hanis av ala adam, everything that becomes disgusting from the person. And then he says, Bein l'shevach, for good reason, because you will magnish it. Bein l'genai, isu, or for bad reason, for good, for disgusting reason, because it's isu. Neifel by lashon kodesh. That word kodesh is appropriate. Kimai, I'll take shibi kikidashtich. And must give you a shot. Okay, so we have a second marker and another, and it seems to me that is the real marker, because that's, he says on Cholos and Suris. Why he says it here different, it's a discussion for itself, but I don't know right now. Perhaps there is an answer that here he's looking more for the practical application of the halacha, which he wants to say with servant. So he brings them all together. But again, it still needs beer. Halacha Zayin Kosa. Halacha Zayin, he writes. Harei Kodesh, right? Which we just said. They become both, and both of them become Aser. So that was our problem. He writes us. He writes a chiyuv of straight, which would put or Klayakeren under the heading of Hanisraf. As we know, there are two types of ways of getting rid of Isurei Hana. There are those that are called the Geborim, and those are called the Straf. The Geborim, the definition, as it is explained, Erchin explains it on Rambam, in Hilchos Chametz Matzah, famous to say that in Psachim Kach Mazach, that when it's Nigborim, the goal is get rid of it. When it's Nisrafim, there's a din sreif. In other words, Nigborim is a means, Nisrafim is an ends. And for that reason, Nisrafim, you can use the ashes. Nigborim, you can't. Because Nigborim, you never fulfilled anything. You just put it away. And it's rotted. Good. Rotted doesn't mean you can have enough of it. But in the Srafim, you have accomplished what needs to be accomplished. So the Rambam here says it's been on the Sraf. Now that's not so posh. The Aruch HaShulchan wants to say, no, it's not really Midaraisa. And he brings a raya from Mishnah and Tumura. The Mishnah says that the liquids of Klai HaKerem, and same thing with Erla, are not burnt. They are to be buried. So here you see that there's no din of shreif, there's no mitzvah of shreif. Okay, there's a lot of discussion about that. There is so therefore he says it's midrabban, and then the only reason what Rambam was saying is get rid of it. The best way, the best way to get rid of it is burn it. But it's not so partial, because if you tackle women in the bar, you shouldn't be burn it, because then you matter the afra. It's not a simple answer what he gives. But there is a Ritva in Sukkah that seems to say a similar lush. And he says he's burned it in order to, that's what people do. Not because it's mechuyev to do. That's what it sounds like. But again, the Rambam does not sound. That one seems to din, you have to burn it. So there's a din in the, which again, using the yeshiva shishra, it's a din in the chefts of burning. Okay. Halacha, the main halacha that we spoke about, he uses dual expressions, which when it talks about the roya, he writes osur b'haniyasa, v'chol adam l'torah. When it comes to the balaker, it's mekadesh. So again, you see, when it talks about the issur to the person, he avoids the lashon mekadesh. He's more into the lashon of issur hana. When it comes to the balaker, it doesn't not also hana l'chol adam. It's mekadesh. Now, even if he writes mekadesh in other places, but why in the same halacha does he switch? So you see here from the Rambam that there are two things. There's a concept of issur, and there's a concept of kiddush or megdush. That's what it is. So, what maybe you can say, as we said before, there's a din of streifa, which means it's a heftzdik din. That there are two things in Kilayim. There is a din in the chayfetz, in the Kilayim, that it's kiddush, and that's why the Rambam uses those l'shainis. And we'll talk about how, why. Magdish, Kadesh. And then there's the Yisr Hano, which then there's a Gavridik Yisr. And Yisr Hano, which is a Gavridik Yisr. This concept that Kilayim is a Dover HaNis'al, a disgusting thing, and therefore it's like, and that's why he wants to bring it out. He wants to bring out kiddush. It's not just that it's a davar rachuk, something you have to be rachik, something away from it. Together of tiyuv. The Rebbe in Chelik Chavtes, Kute Sichas, Pashas Kiseitze, there's a long arichas about them. The differences in Kilayim, as we know, there's the three types of Kilayim. Klai Behema, Klai Zroim, Klai Godim, and he discusses what each one has dinim that are different than each other, or at least have a minute. Then Bas Bechol, he connects to whether it has a connection to them. It's an incredible long sikha, incredible long discussion of this issue. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. However, I want to just bring out one nakuda that he brings there. He quotes the Ramban and Rabbeinu Bechaya that explain what's wrong with Kilayim. What's wrong with Kilayim is that you are genetically engineering the world. You're trying to change, making a change in the way things are created. The way things are created is in their physical and spiritual component. And by you getting involved and doing a genetic change by doing Kilayim, you are being the Lashon Ma'arviv HaKeiches HaMegadlim Atzmachim Lias Yenkim Zalizah. You mix them together, and the Ramban ends up with a Lashon there that the Ma'arviv or Ma'arviv Kilayim Makhish u'Ma'arviv Ma'aser Reish. You weaken and you mix up Ma'aser Reish. And Rabbeinu Bechaya goes on to also is more Kabbalistic in the Golui, and he writes that the way they used to make things in a chukim way, and you can't. And then he goes on again. That ever brings a lot of these lashonis kiyum ma'arviv akeiches al yeinem mevatel eisam v'ikir eisam min miduyam. In other words, you mess up the keiches al yeinem. He goes in. That's a real arich. It's a beautiful piece. And so I remember Arab keiches and nice that okay and nice keich a lot of keich smicha. You mess it up. And he's how the logic you chiber snake tzavish shem beis alfachim. You took two opposites and brought them together. So all that you can't do. And ein chiburon eila yafe. It's not good. Not good. So you talking. That's what the Rambam is using that lashon hagdish because it is. You're messing up. You're it's a tiyuv. It's a hagdish, in the way Rashi says, because you're ma'arviv mishana ma'aser reish, and you do something that's not fitting, and that's the hefts of the keiser of Kilayim. Why it's osir, it's osir anon. That's the Rambam's lashon. It's rachek. It's something you should stay away from. You shouldn't have a shaykhis to. And that's where it comes from. That's where the issa comes from, and that's why there is the lashon kodesh there. Could be again assuming it's a derai, so that there's also a gavra and it's a non. And that is a gavra. It could be chal on a person individually. Now, going with this approach, that the Isagavra could also come from the fact that you are okay with this eruv of ma'aser reish, and that's why it's awesome. I mean, in other words, it could be a product of the tiyuv, but not you can't make it. It's not yours. That's the word. Another mekadim b'am. The shaila is where does this such an issur come from? How do you create the surim? Where did the Rambam create things on his own? Okay, I don't know the answer for that, but there's a Malbim, Brashevsky says, that really quotes a medrash, but the medrash is not really saying what he's saying, but it is what he says. This is a Kamach Kilayim, Pentuk Dasham Leia Azera, Asher Tizra, Utvu Zakar. So he writes that this extra word, Hazera Asher Tizra. Why is it Asher Tizra? It's obvious with the Zera. So he says this comes to teach us the din of this Rambam. That a roya Kilayim became chamerei. It's the roya is also banai. And he says that the word is like asher tizra faket. The extra asher tizra is telling you caused it zriya because you were there and you didn't stop it. So and it's answering it for this person. So, Ulaya Shleimar, that this is a makoir, this is the mocker for the din of Isra and that can be Chala Negavre. Even though it's not the tiyuv that creates a tiyuv, because I know the Magnus Dover Shalai, and it's like you can't make that tiyuv. That's why he doesn't use another Isra, because the Isra is a result of the tiyuv. However, the Torah is mechadish and Isra. Of Asher to Isra, you caused. The fact that you caused, it's also to you. And as we said, every person has to be disgusted by this type of thing. They're being on a personal level. And therefore there's a personal Isser of Kiddush. But it's only again the Isser. It's not it's Isser of tolerating the Kiddush, not but it still remains only the Sigar. And Agar is a big Kiddush to say that this is the source of the Rambam, but it's the only source that I have found to date. And if anybody finds something better, that would make it an Isser that I say. At least we have some sources that I say, and it fits into the Lashon Rambam that it's not a knas. I thought that there is such an Isser. And this fits very well if you go through that Sikha, from the Nam Dominion, that there's that of the different types of Kilayim, but Kilayim, Zroyim, and Kilayim Behema, which is literally engineering the world and trying to create. That's a mess. That's a person should leave creation the way the Eibishter is creation, which is the way the world should be. A good Ner Shabbos, Atzlocha Rabba, Metz Hashem, Let's weiter, Atzlocha.